Looking into the sky, people all across the wastes stand still at the flying wonder steaming past. A wonder which no mere tribal, farmer, orator ever dreamed of, let alone seen. This is not the Commonwealth, nor is this the Prydwen. This is Appalachia, in what we would call West Virginia, and written across its darkened mast reads the words Cass Wenin. Watching from below, an Appalachian opens a can of aquapura, a miracle from the east, which has brought life back to the wasteland. He has no answer for the technological wonders, and no knowledge of their plans, but his stomach aches with doubt. Despite the airship's booming proclamations, he knows, wherever that airship flies, it brings war. The Cass Wenin sails off into the rising sun, trailed distantly by two more Brotherhood airships. What if Sarah Lyons survived? It's a question that's rarely ever positive, but has massive implications. To some, it means nothing. The Brotherhood still would have hated ghouls, still would have hated synths, and wouldn't have grown as quickly as it did under Maxson. But to others, it means progress, under leadership which cares more about people than rules. To understand how Sarah's survival changes anything, we must first understand how Sarah died, which there ain't a lot of information. In Fallout 4, Proctor Quinlan basically writes off her death with a single line, saying she got killed in battle. This ain't too unusual by itself, as Sarah is known to go charging into battle without wearing a damn helmet, specifically against super mutants. At first glance, it just seems like she died fighting the Lion's quagmire. A fitting end to the unpopular Lion's regime, dying in battle against their swarm enemy, killed off slowly in a never-ending war. But what happens after is some string of weak Brotherhood elders swing by, and Arthur Maxson, a 16-year-old, gets put in power. A child. Children aren't put in power without reason. They're weak, and while the young elder did have a decisive personality, he would have simply been too inexperienced, naive, and young to rule without stable advisors, like Robb Stark. Not only this, but immediately after he gets proclaimed elder, the outcasts randomly rejoin the Order, out of respect for Maxson's conservative views. Things aren't adding up. A succession crisis, followed by a child leader at the benefit of an exiled court chapter, it screams conspiracy, and that's how she died. She was the only thing keeping the Brotherhood from returning to conservatism, and while the old elder Owen Lyons at least had old age to cap his unpopularity, Sarah didn't, so she was killed. And yeah, there's technically no evidence for it, but yeah, no, she was 10,000% assassinated. You can't convince me otherwise. Arthur Maxson likely had nothing to do with it, or any knowledge of it. In Fallout 3, he specifically states having a crush on her, nor do I think it was Rothschild. He's old and loyal. No, the one who seems likely would have been Henry Caston. He wouldn't have been idle following the Brotherhood's victories against the Enclave. He would have probably known that unless decisive action was taken, his small chapter would have died out. So what changes? Well, let's first go back to the beginning. The year is 2277, and the Citadel's halls are quiet. Elder Owen Lyons, the man who scourged the pit, who braved the Brotherhood across the continent, who destroyed the Enclave and gave water to the wasteland, dies. He leaves behind a Brotherhood en route to glory, but one that's weak in the short term. The outcasts have mutinied, and many are left dead from his long war with the mutants. To make things worse, a big mutant named Shepherd rallied the DC mutants and a new army to terrorize the wastes. But morale is not low, for the Brotherhood has a new elder, Sarah Lyons. the popular friend, soldier, and leader of Lyons' Pride. Surely this beautiful, determined, and energetic woman would lead the Brotherhood to glory, and that is what she does. From the Citadel, she leads a new offensive against Shepard, breaking his ranks and forcing him out of DC. As she battles through the Capitol building, her Lyons' Pride leading the charge, her disciplined troops crush the mutants in their way. But as they fight, they get drawn out. The endless rooms and hallways of the old Capitol making for easy misdirection. The main host of Brotherhood Knights falls behind the Pride, and Sarah gets separated from her companions. As they break up, entering different rooms. She entered a room, backed by nobody, with two ugly mutants in her way. They shoot, but their bullets bounce off her powerful T-60 power armor. She downs the first mutant, but the second charged in with a hammer. For a brief moment, she's flung back by its momentum, but quickly regains her composure. As she fights the mutant hand to hand, eventually, she breaks the mutant with a powerful gut punch, followed by discharging her sidearm into the mutant's head, then a few more times for good measure. For a second, she stood there, staring at the body. Back to the door, breathing hard. The room is dark, but illuminated by light from beyond the doorway. From there, she can see a shadow cast by another Brotherhood member. She nearly spoke before a loud slam echoed on the back of her helmet, a gunshot bouncing off the armor. She turns, half flabbergasted. She's not disturbed. Misfires happen, especially when you're covered in abomination blood. And it's dark. Hell, the kid from Vault 101 shot her armor by mistake once. "Watch it," she yells, turning. A second shot nails Sarah between the eyes, her helmet being the only thing saving her life. She stumbles back, doubt flooding her senses. Before she can think, the man charges her. He slams into her gut in a wrestle to force her to the ground. "The hell!" Sarah yells. Fear sets in, but Sarah's well trained. She quickly understands the gravity of the situation as she fights to regain composure and throw off the attacking paladin. The paladin, whoever he is, still has pistol in hand as he tries to wrap his arm around her while prying off her helmet with the other. A classic technique. He might have thought her power armor was a mere T-45. But now he knew the only way to finish the job would be to pry open some exposed hole and shoot. But Sarah wouldn't let him. She bear-hugged him, forcing his hands into a chokehold. She slams her leg between his and pulls. For a second, he clings to dear life, and they awkwardly hop around each other, both refusing to be the first to fall. But Sarah is well-trained and young, and she gains the upper hand. The paladin tumbles to the earth with a loud shake, and Sarah falls herself, but quickly gets up. She lunges for her laser rifle. For a second, the fight seems over. Another Brotherhood paladin appears in the doorway. "You," Sarah says. "Cover me. The man raises his laser rifle and aims it directly at Sarah. Sarah aims hers, but not as fast. He shoots 4 times. None doing serious damage, but definitely giving her a big shake. The second man shadows the first, blocking the doorway. The first man gets up, and they both stand stalemated across from each other. "Go," the first paladin said, as they both rushed her once again. Sarah is prepared and meets the first man with a dodge, sending him stumbling into a wall. For the second man, she meets his punch with an inward block, and retaliates with her own square in the paladin's neck. She stumbles, but grabs on. The first man joins in. For a moment, they are once again spinning around the room, both wanting to wrestle her to the ground, but neither achieving it. At least, until a third man arrives. This time, Sarah does not say a thing. He also charged headlong at her, forcing her into a wall. Sarah's armor blocked a lot, but not all. She feels the first punch against her face, a punch with such force her head gets slammed back her own mask, giving her a bloody nose. Bruises and wounds ache across her torso and arms. She fights, but with each moment her stamina runs low. She doesn't even yell, and breathing itself becomes hard. Then a fourth man arrives, and he too isn't a member of the Pride. The rest of the army is far off, it seems, and these stragglers are all she has now. They force her to the ground, her legs finally giving in. On the ground, Forced up against a wall, they force off her helmet and see her bloodied face. "Who are you?" Sarah groans. They don't answer. Instead, the fourth man raises a 10mm pistol straight to Lyons' head. He says, with a raspy voice full of malice, "Ad Victoriam." And all together, as if in a hive mind, they say, "Ad Victoriam." A single gunshot echoes throughout the room. In our own timeline, Sarah Lyons dies here. Her assassins put the pistol in the hand of a dead mutant before fleeing. The Pride only finds her after they clear the capital. Her death is attributed to greenskins, and the rest is history. But in this timeline, something changes. A gunshot flies through the air, and Sarah flinches hard. But she feels nothing. To everyone's surprise, the fourth paladin crashes to the floor, dead. Behind him is the only man who can bring change to the capital wasteland, the kid from Vault 101. Perhaps he shot a weak point in the T-45 armor, or perhaps he scored a critical hit. Either way, the assassins now have a new enemy. While they're distracted, Sarah musters all the strength she has left and throws the men off her. 2 of the 3 attack the Vault Dweller, and the third tries to finish off Sarah. Without doubt, the Lone Wanderer doesn't look like much of a threat, but the Lone Wanderer is not most men. He unleashes a new weapon, his Gauss rifle, which melts through the first man like butter. And the third man, meanwhile, tries pulling his sidearm, but Sarah doesn't let him draw. She tackles him to the ground, her armor's weight keeping the lighter T-45 in check, while she smashes into his helmet. The second man attempts another attack on the Vault Dweller, but misses his shot. Instead, it's the Lone Wanderer who strikes, his Gauss rifle being more than enough to knock him out of the fight. Sarah keeps pounding the third man until he no longer moves. Sarah turns to her friend and, lacking the energy to speak, mouths, "Thank you." The Lone Wanderer nods. "We're even now," he says, before turning out the doorway and scuttling off. "Wait," Sarah pleads, her voice half broken by exhaustion. Despite her dizziness, Sarah stumbles out the door, hoping to get at least 2 more clear words through to him. On the other side, the Vault Dweller is nowhere to be seen. Sarah stands, the world spinning faster as she takes deep breaths. "Lyons, the West Wing is..." Sarah turns to see Paladin Tristan rushing up to her, before stopping, gazing at the sight of her bloodied face and armor. "Elder?" Sarah locked eyes with him, her eyes glazed by a fog of duty and determination. A face she was made well to wear in every battle. But just for a second, her eyes crack from stress. Finally giving in to adrenaline, she collapses. Her eyes finally open tomorrow morning. For a brief moment, she thought it was all a dream. The battle, the Wanderer, the betrayal. It isn't until Arthur Maxson comes in, then Rothschild, then Tristan, does she learn everything was very real. She tells them about it. The battle, the 4 men, the fight, the Wanderer. "Well, you took down 4 men yourself. Clearly have some animal in you," Tristan said. "One of the 4 survived. He's being treated for his wounds. We'll be sure to find out his master by the end of the week." "You're lucky to have lived, Miss Lyons," said Rothschild. "Though rest be assured, if what you say is true, you've survived the worst. Your wounds are nothing a few stimpaks couldn't heal." She asks about the Lone Wanderer, about what happened to him. "The man from Vault 101? Arthur asks. "I thought he died at Project Purity." "James's son," Tristan said. "None of my men have seen him, not that I could find." "I'm afraid he's disappeared. Nobody has seen him since the night after Adams Air Force Base," Rothschild said. "Are you sure he was there? It seems a bit unlikely he could just appear and disappear at will, unless he had some solid stealth technology." Sarah frowns. She will lead on, these injuries merely slowing her down. But she will never know what happened to that kid, nor what he knew, and why he was there at the right time. Now, obviously, this scenario is pretty fanficky. There's really no way of knowing exactly how she died. Hell, Paladin Dance can say something off the lines of, "Remember the Citadel" in Fallout 4. Maybe she died during that, assuming the Lone Wanderer didn't shell the Citadel. Whatever the details are, this is what I'm going with. Before we continue, I also want to clarify what happens to the Lone Wanderer. In canon, he vanishes into thin air, and for sake of the timeline, I can't keep bringing him back. We have no reason why he left, or no none. Some people think he was framed for Sarah's death, which is why he isn't mentioned in Fallout 4 terminal entries. I do not believe this. I don't think the outcast-biased Brotherhood writers would have wanted to mention him, just like how they never mentioned Paladin Tristan or Rothschild, both prime candidates for who would have taken over after Sarah. They don't, because it makes them look bad. I don't think it had anything to do with Sarah, nor Arthur Maxson for that matter. I agree he wouldn't like Maxson's reforms, given what his family did, but he was long gone before then. He probably died at Project Purity, or left to New Frontiers. Perhaps he stayed in space after Mothership Zeta. Whatever the reason is, he still disappears, both because it's realistic and it helps with clarity. Even if the circumstances change, Sarah would have definitely found out who her assassins were. And given she already proposes attacking the outcasts in Fallout 3, her heart would have been made stone. For the outcasts, this is the worst thing that could have happened. The Brotherhood outnumbers them, some 5-1 in-game, and their only not pathetic leader is Caston. They absolutely cannot match, nor can they flee, as they propose doing, since they'd be weighed down by equipment, and the journey would be over 3,000 miles. Sarah would have annihilated the outcasts. The Brotherhood would have stormed Fort Independence, killing Caston and anyone who resisted. The survivors get assimilated, or scattered to the wastes. Some try fleeing west, but few make it. For Sarah Lyons, it's a personal victory. Her father's greatest failure is now redeemed, but it also means the end of her honeymoon period. The outcasts, while exiled, were still popular among the Brotherhood, especially with Rothschild and Agincourt. Attacking them is political suicide. It would make the conservative wing hate her to a man. This is kind of like why Roosevelt couldn't expand civil rights under his presidency. If he tried, his support base would blacklist him and stand in his way for every bill henceforth, stopping him from doing important things like beating up no-no Germans. The conservative wing would fight her in every decision Sarah would henceforth make. No longer is Sarah able to enjoy her leadership like she used to, her reign being less of glorious victory and saving wastelanders, but more about grinding, mundane, everyday politics. She is forced to sheathe her sword and start governing. This task is most crucial to Sarah's success. It's very easy to conquer, but very hard to govern, and she who cannot govern will lose it all. So will she succeed? Well, it ain't easy. Even Arthur Maxson can't govern without botching it up so badly he needs a cure-it-all ship to save him, or without causing his own chapters to fall into civil war. But I think Sarah Lyons would have succeeded at a bare minimum. She wouldn't be a great charismatic reformer, but she would hold on to power. She would have also had to take a back seat to leading on the front lines. It's very romantic to think of a leader who personally leads armies into battle, but also very impractical. A leader can't do everything herself. An elder's job would have been to manage, to lead, not to fight. So she would have eventually had to take a back seat, leaving her position in the Lyons' Pride to Paladin Tristan, and eventually Arthur Maxson. An immediate problem Sarah would have faced is a lack of resources. When the outcasts left, they took a great deal of equipment and scrap that the Brotherhood needed for day-to-day repairs. In Fallout 3, you can find Brotherhood members mentioning supply shortages and how power armor often goes with little consistent repair. By crushing the outcasts, this problem doesn't get better. Sure, the Brotherhood would have reclaimed much of this technology, but a lot would have been destroyed. The saving grace for Sarah would have been Adams Air Force Base. The Brotherhood would have had a lot of scrap from the mobile base crawler, so that saves the Brotherhood in the short term. Another success for Lyons will be the death of Shepard, which happens much earlier in this timeline. But from here, Sarah's reign spirals into mundanity. With resources from the crawler diverted to daily repairs, less can go to the Prydwen, if that's even what it's called, if it's not changed to something like the Pride or the Revelations. Furthermore, many outcast sympathizers worked on building the Prydwen, and with their destruction, these skilled minds wouldn't have gone to it. I still think the Prydwen would have been built, and hell, probably to similar standards. The Brotherhood already has experience in airship construction, and it seems the plan was created before Maximus Elder. But with all these issues, it would have taken much, much longer. And, even if the end result is less impressive, which it might be. Without the Prydwen, the Brotherhood can't launch their massive offensive against the Institute, like in our own timeline. They still would have wanted to. The Brotherhood still sends the 3 recon teams, learns of the Institute, and meets the sole survivor. Given the nature of the Institute itself, there is every reason to suspect Sarah would have hated them just as much as Arthur. The Brotherhood probably also would have sent reinforcements to support Dance. I can't see them abandoning their team to die. But without the Prydwen, plans for a direct assault are dead in the water. The supply lines are just too weak. Without the Brotherhood, the Institute can focus more on local affairs. In our own timeline, the Director Board basically brushed aside the Minutemen because the Brotherhood is a more pressing threat. In this timeline, they do not. The Commonwealth War is much bloodier in this timeline. But still, even without the Brotherhood, the Institute is still destroyed. Fallout 4 ends in a decisive Minuteman victory. The Minutemen and their railroad allies are now the dominant force in New England, and the Brotherhood does nothing but gaze upon the glory they could have had. Without the Institute, and with a developing Minutemen proto-nation assembling, the Brotherhood has no reason to advance into the Commonwealth. The railroad is too irrelevant, and the technology too heavily guarded. The most would have been a few scouting teams, looting ruins for pre-war weapons, or perhaps the beryllium agitator. But as the Commonwealth develops and the land runs out of power armor, the Brotherhood would have eventually left, one way or another. Eventually, the Prydwen would have been constructed 5 or so years later, but she would have nowhere to bring it. We have no knowledge of the areas outside of DC. She might want to secure the missile silos in Appalachia, although it's likely those are all expended. She could go to Philadelphia or New York, but we have no knowledge of those areas, so it's basically fan fiction. Plus, leaving would stretch an already overextended Brotherhood to new places, abandoning their settlement allies like Rivet City or Galaxy News Radio. No, Sarah would have stayed in Washington, and in all likelihood, this is where her story withers out. She would have fought super mutants, provided water, and secured the wasteland. Hell, if creation content is to be believed, it's actually better for the wasteland, as the Brotherhood gutted their home forces to supply war in the Commonwealth, leaving it open for enemies like Talon Company to take over. But that's it. The canonicity of Fallout Tactics and Brotherhood of Steel is debated, but if information from Fallout 3 and New Vegas is true, it's heavily implied the Midwestern Brotherhood rejected most Brotherhood traditions and split apart into independent factions. The same would be dangerously likely for the Lyons chapter. Over time, to gain support in her chapter, Sarah would have slowly stacked the Brotherhood with new outside recruits, loyal to her and her ideology. The old guard would have died off as Sarah aged. Settlements would have been reliant on the brother for water and protection, encouraging cooperation and increasing brotherhood power. With the East rejecting them and splitting apart into tiny chapters following the NCR War, the Lyons Eastern chapter would have slowly marched from the Eastern Brotherhood of Steel to a glorified Lyons dynasty, or some other variation of independence. Sarah Lyons is inspiring. She's a dedicated soldier who maintains discipline, hope, and perseverance in her ranks. A devoted daughter who stood by her father's side during many challenges. An empathetic friend who cares for others above herself. And a good officer willing to take risks and fight Brotherhood enemies. But is this version of Sarah legit? People aren't machines. Sarah is a leader only because she needed to be. As the elder's daughter, in the face of Lyon's pride, this personality was probably just an adaptation for her precarious burden and responsibility. This is not Sarah Lyons, it's a mask for a performance. With this in mind, do we ever see the real Sarah Lyons? The girl who is barely carrying her immense burden, who has no family to get vulnerable with, who is having nightmares from the constant battles she's in? Not really. We kind of see it following Adams Air Force Base when she speaks to the lone wanderer, and her father probably knew it, given he put effort into celebrating her birthday. But truth be told, we never really see it. The mask is near permanently on. Just picture it. A leader forced to wear a tough, decisive face around everyone and anyone she meets, whilst having no close friends or family to be vulnerable with. With time and her father's death, this burden would only get heavier. Sure, she has Maxson and plenty of followers, but few close friends. I can picture Sarah growing more depressed as time goes on. She is strong, however, and continues leading with every bit of tenacity as she ever did, but behind closed doors, she feels no reason to get out of bed. Every day growing bland, distasteful, and gray. Routine eating at her soul. She would wish for something, anything, to break it. Would Sarah ever have children? The temptation would be there. It will give Sarah someone, a family, to express the burden. Sure, the Brotherhood is a family, but this family would be closer, less full of followers. It would also help secure power. Maxson, despite his probable loyalty, is still a threat to Sarah's legacy, given his conservative views. Hell, half the damn chapter would want Sarah dead specifically to put Maxson in charge. Having another heir would put distance between Maxson and the throne, making conspiracy less attractive. Plus, as Sarah ages, the pressure to produce an heir will have grown. The Brotherhood, even with regulations, is a dictatorship which uses norms and nepotism to influence succession. Elder Owen Lyons had a very clear succession policy through his daughter, but his daughter, feisty and dedicated as she was, had none. This is somewhat problematic. In Fallout 3, Sarah has little interest in romance. She might be asexual, or as I believe, her mask becomes so strong that she never had a normal childhood and never learned to seek romance. Nor do we have any obvious candidates for Sarah to mingle with. Not even the 6-year removed lone wanderer. Sorry, shippies. We can't say if Sarah would have kids or not. Sure, Arthur had a crush on her, but that's probably just due to him growing up. I don't think this pedophilia dream would have happened. Sarah Lyons probably would have just passed the age of fertility without thinking about it. That's just the way she is. Something she likely passed to Arthur Maxson, given he is also a complete workaholic with no interest around women. If she has children, the future for the Lyons dynasty is secured. She would have definitely taught the child Lyons-based morality, and with the old guard dying off, he, or she, would have been raised in a court undergoing massive transition, as Sarah's reforms changed the Brotherhood from a stagnant military power to a government. It's not a task the Brotherhood is used to, but by the time he takes power, the Eastern Brotherhood will be in a prime position to expand, and the new elder will be uniquely conditioned for the administration his forefathers struggled with. If he gets to rule, he'll have no reason to keep the Brotherhood traditions alive. The Brotherhood would have drifted off, the Lyons cancer materializing, and the wasteland actually rebuilding. If not, Maxson likely takes power. With him, literally anything could happen. He wouldn't have a long reign, he'd just be too old by then. He could continue the Lyons doctrine, or he could stay the same, as I believe, always loyal to his elder sister, but never relinquishing his beliefs. If he's conservative, I don't think he could repair the schism. The problem will be too fused to really be solvable. A good comparison for this would be Christianity and the Roman Emperor Julian. Julian was a pagan, he wanted to crack down on Christianity, but Christianity was so cemented into the empire at that point, it was just impossible. Maxson would want to rein in Lyons' era beliefs, but Sarah would have had a long reign, and she would have stacked the Brotherhood with Lyons' loyalists, so he wouldn't get anywhere. He'd just end up having a muddy reign at best, and splitting the chapter at worst. When he dies, the Brotherhood would have just kept on its path like nothing happened. To keep the scenario simple, and because we don't have any candidates for Sarah's partner, I will say Sarah doesn't have children. The issues around her succession will be ignored for now, presumably going to Arthur Maxson. And, by the way, I just realized I kind of sound a bit craven here, like I'm saying, "Oh no, a woman's place is raising a family, blah, 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 blah." No, I didn't mean to imply that. I just think it's useful for the story. I know bringing up family is sort of an old guard talking point, but I in no way meant it as that. I meant it more as a political decision. My bad if I kind of sound misogynist. I do not want to sound like that. I also apply the same mindset to Arthur Maxson, who has some of the same burdens. It's just a observation. Alright, cool, thanks. Now, this all may sound like Sarah's rule is worse than canon. After all, the Brotherhood stagnates and the Commonwealth chapter is never founded. But this is only one side of the coin. In every way, this did massively benefit the capital wasteland. Why? Well, let's look at the settlements. In canon, it's a popular talking point among forums to say the Brotherhood established order in the capital wasteland. But what order is this? Does the Brotherhood have a judiciary, a police system, patrols, governors, taxes, citizens, a social contract, a civilian law code? No! The Brotherhood doesn't have any of these fucking things. They have trade deals, vassals, a codex, but they ain't a government. They haven't provided order to the capital wasteland. Yes, they crushed the Enclave and the mutants, but big whoop. They don't fight raiders or slavers, and whatever help the Brotherhood gave was cut off by Maxson. All they do, by the time of Fallout 4, is provide water. If capital wasteland mercenaries ought to be believed, the Brotherhood abandons order in the capital, leaving it up to good fighters. If true, then the Brotherhood hasn't done jack shit to establish order, and settlements took up the mantle. This is important, as it establishes the Brotherhood's relationship with the Wastes. The Lyons were definitely the main security guarantor, but they didn't rule alone. Settlements cooperated with the Brotherhood, and the Brotherhood provided services. It's not domination or government, it's a network of dealing, trades, and defensive pacts, with the Brotherhood in the middle. In our timeline, this network continues unmolested and grows. The Brotherhood wipes out the mutant threat and supplies water in exchange for produce and technology. This makes it so settlements focus less on survival and more on other things, like trading. This encourages cooperation, which leads to confederation, as the network begins relying on each other. Settlements would have rushed to make deals with the Brotherhood. Settlements like Rivet City, which has a lot of money, people, and tech, would have provided security and technical assistance for water. Megaton, which has plenty of land, would have been pleased to have lower water prices in exchange for a yearly tribute of crops. The Temple of the Union doesn't have much of anything, but wants to take a leading stance against slavery, and since slavery is a common threat, other settlements would have given aid for their help. This would be a massive boom for the Brotherhood. They'd have plenty of recruits, technology, caps, and resources. I could see the Brotherhood continuing to build bonds by wiping out Shepherd, then Talon Company, slavers, or raiders, which, yeah, that's a little murky. The Brotherhood elite probably wouldn't approve of fighting raider clans. It's just not their job. And hell, Sarah'd probably agree. She's a progressive Brotherhood member, but still a Brotherhood member. The Brotherhood can't police the wasteland. To fix this problem, Lyons organizes local militias for basic security, much like in Commonwealth Wasteland mercenaries. In this timeline, the militias are better organized and loyal to the Lyons regime. Education also expands, both because settlements now have the time to care about such things, and because Rivet City, a center for post-war research, is left untouched. It goes without saying that what happens to Rivet City is very controversial. In Fallout 4, it's mentioned that the Brotherhood got an all-important nuclear reactor from that old aircraft carrier. A reactor that'd be very important to anyone living on said carrier. Hypothetically. Possibly. Maybe. In Minecraft. Now, I can already hear the Brotherhood fanboys furiously masturbating into the comments. Oh, but it could have been a different aircraft carrier. Oh, Rivet City has 2 nuclear reactors. 1, it's the only aircraft carrier in all the game. 2, it says that. You do not say that unless you already know what it is, aka Rivet City. If it wasn't, they'd have said a carrier. We do not listen to Brotherhood fanboys on this channel. Some claim the carrier has 2 reactors, like real life. I checked Rivet City myself and I couldn't find anything. I think there's a reactor under the CPS, but I couldn't find a second. Because of this, I'm just going to say there's only 1, and the Brotherhood took it. I mean, this is the Maxsonian Brotherhood, an organization notorious for belittling commoners. I don't think Maxson just sacked the city, more than like just strongmanned them into it. This wouldn't wipe out the city, although it guarantees long-term decline, and would be a serious betrayal. In this timeline, Rivet City keeps their reactor, and becomes a center of learning across the wasteland. I could see the development of a Rivet City University with its science center and museum. This has one blind spot, being where does the Brotherhood get their reactor? Which, I don't think the Brotherhood needs one. Proctor Ingram implied the reactor was specifically needed for the long journey through the Commonwealth, a journey which doesn't happen in this timeline. She'd eventually want it anyway, and I don't think it would have been rocket science to get one. Even if they couldn't just build one, they could totally find one in places like Mass Fusion, RIP Liberty Prime. The wasteland, which would have been left to anarchy, is much more prosperous. You see, the Maxsons are like a bull economy, and the Lyons are like a bear. While Maxson bravely leads his chapter to glory and then civil war, Lyons would lead you to civil war, then glory. Hey guys, so this video is much longer than I expected. I thought this whole thing would take like 30 minutes at most. I'm currently at page 14 of 30, and it's pushing 40 minutes. So look, while the things I've discussed previously were relatively tame, the scenario has massive repercussions for the Fallout TV show that I'm sure would make for an absolutely fire video. But because this video is super long, I'm gonna split it in 2. If y'all want to see it, or any other topics, please lend me a hand. I don't want to be that guy. Oh, please, like and subscribe, blah, 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 blah. But I have almost no viewer base, and very much need your help. So if you could all, or any one of you, just please leave a comment, like, subscribe, whatever, as a sacrifice to the algorithm, I'd be over the moon. If this video helps get me at least a little bit towards the 4,000 watch hours and 1,000 subscribers I need to monetize, so I don't die in a cardboard box, then I'll hop on part 2 with the Jippy. Also, if you have any observations or theories of your own, let me know in the comments. I'll be working on part 2 in the meantime, and this will be the only time you have to change the timeline. Alright, thank you very much. I did my best. I hope you enjoy the video. Godspeed.